Welcome to the Cincy Postcast. I'm Kevin Wallace, and before we get into today's episode, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about our sponsor, Streetside Brewery. And boy, howdy, do we have an exciting time over at Streetside. Look, Streetside, if you don't know, and if you don't know, shame on you. I can say that in all honesty. Shame on you. One of the best Cincinnati breweries in town. Awesome place, awesome venue, awesome beers, really, really good stuff. But this weekend, it's a busy time over at Streetside, and you've got to go over and check them out. Not least of which, Pickle Fest, August 30th. They're releasing an all-new pickle beer. Maybe this can be a little divisive in the beer community, but these guys put together some of the best beers. I will be giving this one a shot. Again, that is happening on August 30th, 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. It is Pickle Fest over at Streetside. Later on that weekend, you got live music. Tim Snyder on August 31st. Sunday, September 1st, Formula One watch party at 9 a.m. And then Premier League mornings a little bit later. It's Man United versus Liverpool on Sunday, September 1st. It's a good time happening over at Streetside this weekend. Go check them out. And if you do check them out, which again, you should, if you drop this podcast's name when checking out, they'll knock a buck off of each beer you are drinking. Just mention the postcast at checkout. They give you a little bit of a discount, and you let them know that we sent you their way. So again, thank you to Streetside for sponsoring this episode. Thank you, listener, for using that promo code. And let's get on with the show. And on today's show, a proper three-parter for you. In part one, it's an FC Cincinnati news roundup. A new signing, dare I say, a DP has signed for FC Cincinnati. Kind of, sort of. What does it mean for the team now? What does it mean for the team going forward? Also, some rumors out there that should probably be addressed. Then in part two, it is a fantastic edition of Patreon questions. Some really, really good questions in this one. And we wrap it all up in part three with a preview of the match versus Montreal in Cincinnati this weekend. Put it all together. You got yourselves one heck of a postcast. Joining me to talk about all of that and more, joined by two gentlemen excited to see Albright isn't done yet. Joined by the Chief, joined by Grayson. Chief, would you like to apologize to Chris Albright now or later?
I guess now and later.
Oh, okay.
I mean, if you would have told me that he had the great teenage Hadebe, is that how we're pronouncing his last name?
Hadebe.
The great teenage Hadebe in his bag of tricks. Maybe I would have dialed the rhetoric down by like 5%, 6%. I know Grayson with his relentless negativity over this window, and only Grayson with his relentless negativity over this window. Maybe he wants to revise his opinion. But you know what? In honor of Mr. Teenage, I have cracked open a Streetside beer. We're drinking Species 002. Why? I don't know. Because it's teenage night here on the postcast.
Okay.
And there's nothing hits like a beer on teenage night.
I don't co-sign most of that, and I may even in fact disavow some of it.
I definitely disavow teenage night.
Well, whatever that is, I want nothing to do with.
Wasn't there like some teenage club that was up back in the day at like Forest Fair Mall?
Club Extreme.
Yeah, Club Extreme.
So this is the Club Extreme postcast, because we celebrate all things teenage on this podcast.
Nope, it's a Volkswagen dealership, and this podcast will become a Volkswagen dealership if you keep this up.
Club Extreme is a Volkswagen.
This is your number one podcast. This is your number one podcast for hot teenage talk.
Nope. No, it is not. It's the last one.
If it's a Volkswagen dealership, it's still a place that will make you uncomfortable.
Certainly the back seat of it will.
Yeah.
What's really
Kevin, you want to get in on this hot teenage talk, Kevin?
Nope. The only thing I will mention is the Club Extreme really followed some people all the way through their life, because before Club Extreme, it was a BZ Discovery Zone and then became a car dealership. So there is likely somebody out there who got to experience this same building as a child, climbing through the gigantic, massive playground equipment, then went to it as the teenage non-alcoholic club, and then later probably bought a used car from that building. So
yeah, I've never met anyone that went to the teenage non-alcoholic club. I just don't know.
I did.
Oh, really? Tell me more.
You've met one now.
Yeah, here we go. Let's talk about this. What was the teenage non-alcoholic nightclub like?
It was weird.
Yeah.
I don't know how. I don't know that I want to describe all the aspects of it on the
it's
podcast.
teenage. No, I'm not actually. No, I'm good.
I will tell you that no matter what you did, you came away with the same smell on your clothes.
Axe body spray blue version.
Yeah, there was people were very. It was like a mishmash of all the different stuff that people were wearing, because everybody was getting real smelly.
Yeah. Everyone was like old enough
Everyone
to know.
got home and they were like, I'm gonna get real smelly tonight before I go to Club Extreme.
Everybody knew that you had to do something when you went out, but nobody quite understood. You weren't old enough to understand what it was that you did to prepare for a night out.
There was so I had a really cool move when I was like 14, which was to like gel my hair and like spike it up.
Yeah.
Good.
But it didn't like stay spiky.
Oh no.
So it just kind of became like little like droopy, like like if a bunch of like if you run your car into like a kind of like a thin tree and it's like bends, just kind of that over and over, like all on top of my head. And I did have depending on the time, I could have been entirely bleached or just the tips, because
Yeah. I was about to ask, did we frost the tips? The other question I was going to ask is, were you give off the vibe, and please take this the wrong way if you want, puka shells and Abercrombie. What was your stance on that when you were at this phase?
So I wore Hollister.
That would have been my next guess.
I did have a puka shell necklace.
Hell yeah.
Nice. Man, we're learning more about Grayson than we are about the team on this episode.
I'll openly admit it. As a teenager, I had
Hollister had the same smell when you entered it that you left Club Extreme with.
So
maybe there were a lot of people who just shopped at Hollister.
Yeah, what I always remembered about those stores in the mall was that Hollister had a smell. Abercrombie had like bass. Like you went into the Abercrombie and like you could feel the air in the place moving with the music they were playing there.
You ever walk by like a Hollister? I don't know if Hollister still exists, but you ever walk by like an Aeropostale like today?
Not
and
often.
You look in and there's like you feel like a mall, right?
Yeah.
You walk by like an Aeropostale or like an American Eagle, and you like look in, and like sometimes there's like full-blown adults buying clothes there.
Yes.
Right. For
That's
our
a problem.
younger
I always get a little chuckle out of that.
For our younger listeners, a mall is a place that you went to buy things before Amazon would deliver them to your house.
Before they banned teenagers from hanging out there, it used to be a place you could hang out and get cigarettes from people.
The mall was my teenage club.
Yeah.
That was where we all hung out. This will shock
Free
no
samples.
one, obviously.
Get the bourbon chicken.
There was always the bourbon chicken from a place that like nobody working there looked like they had ever been to New Orleans before. It was
from the Asian place.
Yeah, but like bourbon chicken. I don't.
Yeah.
They did not carry my size.
What?
in the American Eagle or the Hollister or the Abercrombie. So your boy had no fashion sense whatsoever through most of high school and college. Embarrassingly long period of time that I thought jorts were an appropriate thing to wear out in public. Yeah, no, that was the going out attire for me was it should have stayed out. It should never have come back.
I just realized that between the puka shells, the gelled bleached hair, and for a little stretch of time, about a year, the braces.
Oh,
I must have been extremely shiny.
Not that kind of bling.
The
Wrong
glare
kind of
coming off of this child.
you were flashing whenever you smiled before Paul Wall even made that a thing, I think.
I walk in and I'm like Starlight getting upset.
It's like my teeth are icy, not the kind that you want.
Right. It was ahead of the bling bling era, you know. It was.
Yeah, I was a shithead when I was like that age. I would, if I had extra money laying around, it was going for video games first. And if I was going to buy anything to make myself look fashionable, it was the newer version of the DX t-shirt as opposed to last year's version of the DX t-shirt. I was not in any way putting out a vibe that led people to believe that you might want to have a conversation with me. I was someone to be avoided based on the way that I dressed.
As opposed to the non-shitheads shopping at Hollister and going to Club Extreme.
Well, I thought the direction you were going to take that was as opposed to now with your incredible fashion sense and just vibe of someone you definitely want to strike up a conversation with.
First of all, you're an excellent conversationalist.
That's true.
I think that's true. This is a validation podcast. Second of all, once you're an adult, you're entitled to dress however you want.
That's true. You've earned it.
Like it's more embarrassing to be dressing for other people.
Did you ever have the worry though that like most people I know that are adults, people that are older than me, like anyone that's older than me, I consider an adult. It's just like, I don't know what's going on here. You do notice that at a certain point, people buy the last outfit they're ever going to wear. And I don't mean that as in like they're going to die wearing this and this is what they're buried in.
But also
just
maybe.
But just the vibe freezes.
Yes.
Where all of a sudden every polo still looks like it was made in 1990. I don't know where they're getting these polos that look like they came from the Clinton administration. Or there's people I know that still wear braided belts. I don't know where you buy a braided belt anymore.
Right.
But I am in desperate fear of when is that going to set in for me? And also that maybe it already has. And this is the vibe I'm going to be rocking until the day I die. I don't know that I'm cool with that.
There is a very funny phenomenon of like dressing like an old person isn't a thing. It's that old people are dressing how cool people used to dress. And like, yeah, it locks in at a certain point and that carries with you. So that at some point, the nursing home will be full of UFO pants and Nirvana t-shirts and, you know, the Ramones. And it's going to be good.
I still think that sounds like a good idea. But to me, it's like, yeah, hell yeah, still wearing Nirvana stuff. It's like, oh.
That's what old people wear.
But then wouldn't it look worse if the old person was wearing a shirt that said no cap? I feel like that would just be trying way too hard.
See, that's the thing. You kind of just have to embrace being old.
I think you can. I still firmly think that you can dress how you want.
That's a bold take.
But I do. I guess I have this ongoing theme throughout my life of just like having like these moments like spurts where. And it started when I was very little of being like, oh, I'm going to stop doing this because adults don't do this. Like, I mean, when I was like a little kid, I like 7, 8, I was like, I can't watch cartoons anymore. I need to watch The Fugitive.
What, you watch the
This is what,
a great show.
This is what adults,
show.
I need to watch like grown up TV. And like, I cycled back through like cartoons at various points too, but it's just like you go into these little like phases. So like every so often as an adult, I'll see like a guy walking around in like cargo shorts, which is fine, by the way. Right.
Right.
But I'll just be like, Adults don't wear shorts. I need to wear. I'm going to only wear pants. I'm going to only wear pants the rest of my life, and then I go back to wearing shorts.
Right.
I just love
like after a period of time, but I'll be out for a while. Just be like, no, just linen pants or my Lululemon joggers. That's how men dress.
I love the idea that Grayson may not have thoughts about the Disney afternoon, but definitely has thoughts over whether David Jansen gave a better performance than Harrison Ford as the fugitive. It is weird though, as a teenager, there's very much things that like you start trying to act older because you're starting to like emulate the behavior. You don't know how to be an adult. So you just start emulating the behavior you see around. It's like, oh, this is how adults behave. Children do this. Like, I remember one of the things for me where it's like with Grayson talking about deciding that's what adults do was that I realized, or I thought that when you go to a sporting event, the way to behave like an adult is not to ask for cotton candy, not be wanting to get up for food all the time. What an adult does is an adult gets something, sits down and watches the game. So I would go to games. All I'd want is like a Coke or a Pepsi because that's what adults do, and a hot dog. And then I'm good for the rest of the game. And I later learned that I got to go to more stuff as a kid because I was cheaper to take than my sister, who kept asking for more food and more shit constantly. And if my dad took me instead, he got to go and actually sit and watch the game. Because whenever he said, do you want anything? No, I'm good. I got my soda. But that was all just like, oh, this is how adults behave at the game. Like kids are constantly asking for candy.
Man, it's a shame that like for some people that turns off, because there's definitely behavior in the office that more people should look around and go, oh, adults don't do this. Like people yelling random things, or I've seen behavior in meetings before. It's like, yeah, where were you raised? What companies raised you before you got here? Because what you're doing right now is wildly inappropriate.
I will say office behavior is probably my single most like, and only like in a very specific way, my like single most like online man kind of mindset thing. Okay. Where it's like you see somebody like man or a woman getting like really angry or like yelling or being like unprofessional in some way, and I'm like, no, you must be like the Sigma male. you must act like John Wick in the office. Show no emotion. Just be like, ruthlessly effective. And
I prefer to be the Ligma male in my office.
I'll get you fired.
Yeah.
HR really frowns on Ligma
only if you
males.
tell the second part of the joke.
Oh, man.
Yeah, see, that's the other thing, too, is that, going back to your teenage years, I do sometimes long for the job I just didn't care if I got fired for. Like, that's another part of being like a kid. Like, number one, you could go to the teenage clubs, not for me. Teenage jobs, though, ruled.
Yeah.
You don't appreciate it at the time, how great it is that if you just want to walk off the job because your manager sucks, or you hate the person you're working with, or your friend quits and it's like, oh, I don't want to work here anymore. You just do that and there's no consequences. That's incredible.
Oh, I know there's no consequences because I did that at Kroger. I quit by walking off the job after like a year and a half. And 6 months later, I got hired back on at Kroger. Like it didn't matter.
I was actually, last night I had quite a long drive yesterday, and I was around exit 85 on 71 South coming down to Cincinnati, and
sounds like the start of a Carrie Underwood song.
Hit a piece of debris that was in the road. It was dark, it was black. I didn't see it and just blew a hole in my tire.
Was it
Still
Crew
sounds
Cat?
like a Carrie Underwood car song.
What's that?
Was it Crew Cat that you hit?
Yeah, hopefully. I had to call AAA, got a tow 85 miles down to Cincinnati, and spent the whole time talking to the driver. And we, we talked about like kind of, we drove by Kings Island, and he was talking about how much he likes to go there. And talking about how he used to work there. And it was like a real nice place to work in high school, because you're like, man, there's hundreds of high schoolers here that I don't go to school with. You can just run around. It's just like a party. But I was talking to the guy about like his job and like various jobs he's had. And it's like, we're like the same age. And this dude just like gets a call to drive from Columbus to Cincinnati and back. That's the rest of his shift. And he's just done. Right. And he was talking about how he was like going to quit maybe, or, whatever. I'm like, oh man, this is a truly like free man.
When he dropped you off, did he say, tell him Large Marge sent you? Just the open road.
There's something beautiful about that. I've always had like this ideal version of like, if it all went to shit, I'd be a truck driver. That sounds really fun.
I kind of want to do that right now, and it's not going to shit. Like that sounds like just get in your car and go.
Yeah.
He was telling me about his pit bull that he found on the side of the road while he was driving.
Oh, wow.
Hell yeah.
And he just grabbed it, picked it up, and it's not fixed. And
Hell
he's like, yeah, sometimes it gets a little frisky with my girlfriend's dog, but I just got to break him of that, and then he'll be fine.
So the pit bull
he really didn't want to get him fixed. And I was like, yeah, man.
So the pit bull was
you're a dude rocking around with your dude pit bull, and you guys are just, no one can hold you down. And why would you want to hold this beautiful animal down? I
respect
wonderful.
the hell out of this. This is a pit bull. It's not fixed. All the equipment's working, and it's hitchhiking on the side of the road. And this guy was like, fuck it, pick him up. Let's do this.
That's my guy. It's the vault dweller and dog meat right there.
Yeah.
just two free spirits.
Teenage.
Man, I really like that teenage signs for this club. I was going to try the name and then I just abandoned because
Hadebe.
I hesitated too long. Hadebe. He signs for this club, and it just sends us down a nostalgia trip of our own lives. I really appreciate that.
It is like.
Let's talk about this.
Would you go back if like someone offered you the opportunity and you could relive your teenage years? Would you do it or not?
So I am obsessed with the idea of writing. I'd love to write a book based on this. This is like, I think, a premise that everybody has ever thought of. And it's shocking to me there isn't more media about this, of like, you get to transport your brain now into yourself in the past. And like, how would you navigate your life either differently, or how weird would that be? I think it would actually, there'd be a whole series of really fucking weird things you'd have to contend with. And
would you call it like 13 going on 30?
So that's maybe like one version of this, but man, it's not, and big doesn't work either. Like it's not quite there for me, but
no, big is the inverse. It's the teenager becoming the adult. Right. That's not nearly as much fun.
Yeah. So
you're just a shithead adult at that point.
Right. You're just a regular adult nowadays. Yeah. Oh, he's playing with all the toys in the store. Yeah. His $200 Lego sets.
That'd be really a funny premise for Big, where he fast forwards in his teenage brain, but like instead of like being the same year, it's 30 years from then.
Right.
And it's the same.
Right.
Like he just gets yelled at for playing Xbox all the time.
Or no, he's the kid like Grayson, where he decided all of a sudden when he was a teenager that adults don't do these things. And so all his friends are video game addicts and they play with toys still. He gets transported to becoming an adult. And that is where he learns from his coworkers, oh, you got to hop on the sticks. We're playing Call of Duty tonight. Oh, video games are for kids. No, they're not, bro.
What are you talking about? Right.
And so he learns to be a kid from these
Wow.
overgrown teenage adults that are like going to comic conventions to buy action figures and playing video games at all hours of the night. And go and do like, oh, we're going to the water park this weekend. It's like, what?
Right. Big
That's
two.
a funny thing that the FC Cincinnati players do together is like go to Kings Island together.
Go to Kings Island, play Fortnite.
Yeah, it's funny.
Teenage will fit right in.
He'll do just fine.
Should we talk about him at all? Or
Let's talk about him.
I feel like we've already had a really good discussion about him.
Chris Albright gets his second designated player of the transfer window. After the
First
transfer,
off, how dare you?
Technically, he was a designated player. Teenage was a designated player center back for Houston. The general consensus out of Houston was he was very good. Probably not worth the designated player tag, but was still very good. Had a pretty big injury towards the end of his time there with Houston, sort of derailed what he was doing. Zimbabwean international. After Houston, he went to Turkey for a season or a half a season.
half a season. So he signed a short-term deal with, I'm not going to look it up, something a spore, I'm going to guess.
Konyaspor.
Yeah, Konyaspor. I checked this the other day. I hope it's accurate. I hope I looked up the right thing, but it looked like he was there for half a season, started most of the games in that stretch, and was able to help them just barely escape relegation, which I view as a very successful short-term deal.
Yeah, for
a player. I mean, that's probably kind of what they were thinking. There's an interview out there he gave where he talks about how, I think at the time of signing or when he was still under that contract, that his goal was to come back to MLS, that he wanted to finish his career in MLS and wanted to live in the US. I believe he's married and has kids. I could be wrong about that.
So are we a pro teenage marriage podcast?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. So he said that he said he was concerned, or people were concerned about his health after that big injury, and he signed a short-term deal to prove that he could still play. I have not watched any of the tape from his time in Turkey, but given that they were starting him every game, pretty much, I assume he played at least well enough to keep his starting job, and their results were good enough to stay in the first division. Notably, Obi was somebody who was a good player on a relegated team,
right,
in Turkey.
Yeah, that's exactly who I was thinking of when you were describing that.
So I think it seems like he accomplished his goals with that deal. He did get obviously signed a deal in Major League Soccer to come back. We have him, it was reported, through the end of this year, all of 2025, and an option for 2026. It's going to be a few weeks before we get a salary number for him. And
for the next MLSPA dump, they don't do that until after the secondary window.
They do it after the roster freeze.
Yeah, so it'll be September.
The roster freeze is the 13th or something.
Yeah, so the 14th or that week after we should get a dump.
And we also won't see him until after the roster freeze, really, because it's too soon for him to come for the game this weekend. He's been called up to Zimbabwe's national team for, I think, Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers.
Yes.
He has games on September. Well, he has 2 games. And the last game, I think, is September 10. And so potentially you see him available in the Columbus game, but I wouldn't count on it.
No.
But I would think it probably would be fair to assume
He's played in
he's
MLS
available.
before.
He's available after. Yeah, he knows the
Yeah.
league. He's a fast player. He plays. I think he's left-footed. Plays on the left side.
Yep.
Of the defense. Has played center back and left back. You can see various ways that he could be helpful for the team when he's available. So I don't think that, not being able to get him in, say, like this weekend.
Yeah.
But I don't feel like that's that big of a deal. I mean,
the good news is he'll be getting games in, hopefully with the
Right.
African Cup of Nations, which would hopefully help it qualifiers, which will help his fitness level. You buried the lead on my favorite thing about teenage Habib, and that is that if you look at his Hadebe, teenage, if you look at his roster of clubs he's played on, he played at the famous Chicken Inn FC in the Zimbabwe League. Their nickname is the Gamecocks, founded in 1997, owned and named after the largest fast food retailer in Zimbabwe. And if you haven't looked up their crest, it looks exactly like what you would expect from Chicken Inn FC. It is absolutely incredible.
That is so good. Africa has some amazing team names. There's some great ones out there.
he also played for Kaiser Chiefs.
I was just about to say that is
Which
definitely
which is a fairly well-known South African team. I think that's where Makocho.
It was. He played for them as well early in his
Quality
career.
early 2000s rock band, too.
No, actually, sorry, that's my bad.
Oh, did he
Makocho
not?
never played for Kaiser Chiefs.
Oh, I would have totally missed that.
It might have been Nigel Blom, the guy who played.
It was
for,
Nigel Blom, the guy that I called a scumbag from St. Louis.
That's right.
So this was he was a teenage scumbag potentially.
Right. They were teammates there briefly in 2019. So there you go, Chief. There's some scumbag energy for you.
Yeah, I predict a riot over that mistake.
He appeared 51 times for the Houston Dynamo in his time there.
Won the Open Cup.
Yeah, won the Open Cup.
This is a good bit of business by Albright.
It feels really
right here.
good. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is, was he disappointing as a designated player? Sure. But we've talked about it on the show a bunch. Designated players on the back line are usually not a great value. It's hard for them to show value as a center back. But here's a guy that Albright gets on this team. Extensive Major League Soccer experience, fills a direct need, and they get him after the window closes because he's available on a free. Now, it'll be interesting to see what his budget number looks like, because all of a sudden, they have committed a lot of money to the back line. And I think that with this signing being a 2025 and 2020 option 2026 signing, I think the signs are really pointing heavily, at least to me, that I would be more surprised if Miles Robinson is back next year than part of the team. But I think that the other thing, too, to think about with this as well is that they're accumulating a lot of players that will have value in the league. If Teenage shows out and shows up, his goal was just to be back in MLS. He's played for Houston before. I don't think he's married to the idea of playing in Cincinnati. He's a player where absolutely, if he has a good run to end the season, you could see him being available for GAM next year as an interleague trade. And then at that point, what Albright has done successfully is he has taken money from this year, and by signing Teenage to a contract that has next year and an option year, he's basically signed potentially future GAM if Teenage plays well. So I think that they have committed a lot of resources to the center back position, but they have a lot of different options. You can bring the starters back. You could start next year with Miles, Cheeto, and depending on Miazga's recovery timeline, maybe Miazga. Maybe this frees you up to have more time to let Miazga recover, and then Teenage becomes available near the end of the MLS spring roster freeze on a transfer for GAM. There's a lot of options they've built in because they're getting assets that are definitely going to have value in this league.
You think, with fantasy football starting back up, I like to think about it as like, sometimes even if you have a hole in your starting roster, it's better to accumulate resources and valuable players versus like reaching too deep for somebody just to fill a roster hole, because maybe you end up with a glut of good wide receivers and running backs and you don't have a quarterback. Well, now you have trade assets.
Right.
And I don't think his number is going to blow us away. I don't think his salary number is going to be like wild. I expect he'll come in below all of Miles, Miazga, and Cheeto. But obviously, as we said, we won't know that for sure until the salaries come out in September. But yeah, for all the reasons you said, I think, I don't really view it as a problem if they exercise Miles' option and have Cheeto and Miazga and have Hadebe all under contract. You can move guys if you need to, but you have 2 windows. Maybe you toss a DP tag on one of them if you have to for part of the year, and then you have the summer. You can make another move. As I think we've said before, Albright knows the roster budget better than anybody.
Yeah.
If he doesn't feel like this move is going to tie their hands next year, then I trust that it won't.
Right. Or they've already accepted.
They've already accounted for it or made a decision. Yeah.
They've hitched their horse to this wagon here. Chief, you brought up a great point, and that's actually what I was thinking of when I first heard the length of Teenage's contract here. Was Murphy potentially, depending on what his new contract looks like, could be very valuable trade asset as well within the league. A reliable starter on a fairly cheap salary could net some immediate injection of GAM, which could be useful. But thinking more specifically of the rest of this year and this season, what do you see as this being? I don't know. What's the key with this signing? Does this allow us to move Orishano to the left and bring him back as a left wing back now that we have a, say, potentially more athletic, dare I say, better center back than Ian Murphy to cover for him on the left side? Is this a move that ought to permanently banish DeAndre Yedlin from center back duties for the rest of the year? I'm curious how you guys see this move impacting the current season.
It's interesting because they could have just targeted a center back that was depth, a pure depth signing. They could have gotten like the role that I thought, speaking for myself, that I thought they were going to go fill was the Nick Hagland role,
right?
Where it is purely a depth signing and you go and get someone who is close to a league minimum salary. Maybe someone from the USL or maybe someone that's out of contract in a second division somewhere in Europe, and that's who you're bringing in. This isn't that. This is a guy who, an experienced MLS starter. This guy's a starter.
Yeah.
I think that this says a lot about, number one, how they view Kip Keller. And they gave it a college try. It hasn't worked out for one reason or another. I think that there's a lot of things Kip does well. And I think there's probably a future for Kip in this league, obviously, as a depth piece. But just watching him play, he hasn't been instinctual with the ball at his feet. He obviously is very, very dominant foot favorite and looks uncomfortable when being asked to play with his off foot, which really limits how you can position him on the field. They signed Murphy to the deal, but I think it's telling that in this last game that Murphy healthy on the bench for DeAndre Yedlin to be on the field. and I know that they said the thing in, I think, Laurel's interview with Dom Kinnear, well, we wanted to take a look at DeAndre Yedlin. If someone's lock-on starter in a game where you're trying to win it coming out of one of the top teams in the league, no.
Not the time to experiment. Yeah.
I think what this tells me is that I think that if it's me and I'm looking at this, I would expect Teenage to be the starter as soon as he gets acclimated back to the league and trains with the team a little bit. I think your starting back line for the remainder of the year is going to be Cheeto, Miles, and Teenage. And now your first person off the bench is now Ian Murphy, which is a great choice for if you're chasing a game late, you want to move to a back four late. You now have the ability to do that as opposed to playing the back three. It gives you a couple more bullets to fire in terms of protecting a lead late. I don't know that this changes what this team is doing, but I think now at the very least, I think that they wanted to shore that third spot up. And this gives them, by having Ian on the bench, a lot more flexibility with what they're doing. I would be shocked if Yedlin plays another minute at center back once Teenage settles in here. That's the freedom you get by bringing in a player of this quality. And I didn't see a player of this quality being available for FC Cincinnati with MLS experience.
Yeah. I think that one on Ian's point, I think extending him shows belief in him.
Yeah.
Right. And I have no doubt that he's going to have every opportunity to win a place on the field. But guys at Ian's salary number, you need to have competition for them, I think, as best you can. Like, I think it stinks that we don't have competition really for Buka and Obi.
Yeah.
I know Obi's a DP, so really maybe for Buka, and I don't have complaints for how he plays, but I just think that for the most part, people should be winning starting spots and not handed starting spots. I understand with MLS, with the roster mechanisms, you basically have to pick like the players you pay a lot of money. Your hands are tied because you can't get a similar kind of player. But with Ian, I think he's going to have a fair shake. I think it made sense to bring in somebody who you view as at least competition for him, if not ahead of him. I mean, Hadebe's definitely more experienced.
Yep.
He's played more places and been a starter at more places.
Generally been valued more by
generally
more
been
clubs.
valued more on the market. And you can make an argument. I don't think I would believe it. I don't think I would agree with it. But you can make an argument that this is a move that made the center back group stronger than you started the season with.
Yeah.
And I'm on the record, like, I don't think Miazga, because of everything he brings, is like replaceable in MLS.
Absolutely.
But so maybe you haven't gotten to where you were at your number one guy, although, Cheeto or Miles could, like, I believe in their talent for sure.
Right.
But slots 2 through 4 are undeniably stronger.
Yeah.
And significantly stronger.
It's interesting that if you look at the window that FC Cincinnati had, and like you set aside Cheeto as just being, we needed to replace Matt Miazga. We replaced Matt Miazga's number on the roster. And as best we could, we approximated the talent level of a high TAM level center back. The two
you did as good as you could possibly do.
You did as good as you can do under MLS's salary rules. Like, you're not going to find another Matt Miazga. It just doesn't exist. He's a unicorn of that level of talent at that salary level. But it's interesting to me that the two players they brought in are probably if you went back in time, are the two players that Chris Albright and Pat Noonan probably both wish they had on the roster in the playoffs last year. And that like would have potentially changed the outcome of the playoffs. And that's that a goal scorer that you can bring on late that has the ability to put the ball in the back of the net, that has finishing skills, and a center back that is good enough to start. But if he isn't starting, he's damn sure good enough to hold a position down in the event of someone on a card suspension or a pizza suspension. And so they're basically running 2023 back saying, here's where we messed up. Here are the players so that we're not going to get caught in that position again. The other thing that I've thought about, and I want this to be very clear. I don't mean this as this is a bad player or I'm capping on this player at all. But I almost view a little bit of this as kind of a tacit admission that what I'm seeing and what I think a lot of the fans are seeing is true. And that's that I think that the play of Obi has declined enough that it's no longer Obi can help make a backline better, but that a backline has to be good enough to cover for where Obi's game has slipped a little, where his form has slipped a little this year. That last year, it wasn't quite as important to be strong at every position with the center back role position because Obi was such a good ball winner and good midfield destroyer. I think he's taken a clear step back this year. I still think he's a very good player. I don't think he's as good as he was last year. And I think that you can't rely on him in the midfield providing as much cover to the center back position as he would have 12 months ago.
I also feel like the swap from Moreno to Buka plays into that. I haven't looked at the field position, but it just seems like Pavel is more of an attack minded player than Moreno was, and Moreno was often receiving, like a lateral pass or back pass from Obi after winning a ball or something like that. And I think I would prefer a setup like what they're trying to assemble right now, where you could really rely on Obi in the back line to clean up, and the midfielder between Obi and Lucho is somebody who can consistently, contribute to the attack in positive ways.
Yeah.
Do you think we switch to a back four with this? Do you think there's any chance of that?
I think it's available. But I don't think, no, I don't think we switch to it. Although I really like, and I haven't seen Hadebe, and
you got the personnel to do it now.
I haven't seen Hadebe, and I haven't, obviously we haven't seen him with FC. And I didn't really watch Houston, when he was there.
Right.
But given his profile and what I've read about him as a player, I would really like to see him playing next to Orishano on the left.
Yeah, it could be sweet. But Chief, the diamond is on the table right now is what I'm hearing.
But if you as much as I hate this idea, because we've talked about it enough, you put Hadebe on the left side as the left back. You already have Yedlin that's a natural right back. That's his natural position. Your middle pairing becomes Cheeto and Miles. And then you can still have Luka on the left side of that diamond.
Yeah. With
Pavel on the right side and Lucho as the top, Obi at the bottom. I don't know. It would be weird to see yet another formation shift. I think we're all in agreement. They need to go back to their original 3 at the back, 2 up top formation that we saw when they were playing their best soccer in the spring and the early summer. I don't know. Maybe this solves some things, especially with, Orishano's tendency of wanting to play more inverted. I don't know. I think there's options there. If you,
it feels late in the season to change the lineup like that. But I don't hate the personnel, right? With
crazy if you hated the personnel,
right? If you went, Hadebe, Miles, Cheeto, Yedlin, or Shano, Buka, Obi, Acosta, and then up top you had Kelsey and Kubo.
Yeah.
For now. But I would say like those are the most up for grab spots in that.
Yeah, you're just playing matchups at that point up
in
top.
that lineup. I mean, that feels like a good lineup.
That
if you make a bunch of assumptions about Hadebe.
Right.
Which are
think
like warranted in some way.
He has a track record in this league. I mean, like there's footage to watch of him playing all of the teams we're going to need to play.
Winning knockout games in the Open Cup. Yeah. Handling Miami in Miami, you know. I don't know if he played in that game. I assume he did.
Couldn't be us.
He did lose to
us. I think he only played like a minute in the Open Cup final because I think he was coming back from injury.
Good enough.
It's one more minute of finals experience than anyone on this team has right now.
There is a picture of him with the Open Cup. So that's something nobody else. Well, I don't know. It's something not a lot of other players on the team can say. I mean, Corey Baird can say that.
Okay, yeah, that's true.
Don Garber hates when you share this one image.
Maybe they just signed him for.
Oh my God,
for Corey Baird to have a friend.
Corey Baird got a buddy.
Everyone gets a buddy on this team.
Honestly, though, if it works, it works. Okay.
Yeah. No, this is great.
This is a good signing. I guess. Yeah. Ultimately, though. Yeah, it's so funny that I think the fan base, I think generally the fan base views the offense as more of the issue than the defense. I'm curious what people think about that. But I think when you look at the stats and how the stats bear out, the defense is very clearly the underperforming group of the two, if you just had to group them into offense or defense.
There was a stat running around that since mid-June, early June, this team's giving up over 2 goals a match.
Yeah.
It's one of the worst defenses in MLS during that period. It's to quote the Grateful Dead, it's all one song. The defense is not great. The passing out of the back is not great. It's tough for the defense to build. It's tough for the midfield to build. And then the offense is, by the time they get into the attacking third, their opposing defense is all set. It's all related. Strengthening the back is only going to help this team.
Yeah.
Right. If the offense can't score, obviously you can't be giving up 2 goals a game.
Right.
And what was available to them was signing a defender on this, I assume, reasonable enough free agent deal. And I don't know that like the talisman to fix the offense would have been available in the same. I mean, it wouldn't be available in the same kind of deal. The talisman to fix the offense is Lucho eventually getting healthy. And if you go into the playoffs with a healthy Lucho, you're like, okay,
right.
He's good. Even if the offense isn't clicking, he's good for 1 or 2 moments of magic.
Right.
At least. And as long as you're not giving up 2 goals on the other end,
you can win some knockout games. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So yeah, it's a welcome addition. Speaking of Lucho, we should probably touch on this briefly. It's in the fan base generally. There's scuttlebutt, there's whispers out there that Albright tried to shop Lucho, or not tried, was shopping Lucho, and that is why Lucho is not performing his best. That seems to be some.
I think the second part is left.
Okay.
To be inferred.
Okay. Yes. So the
first
rumor,
part is being stated. The second part is being inferred.
Got it. Okay. So yeah, Lucho as a potential offering from Albright to other teams. I'll say my piece on this, that it is on its face so absurd. I debated even mentioning it on this podcast. Like there's a version of this where, let's assume that is true for a moment, that instead of signing a designated player, potentially 2 designated players, depending on how things could have shaken out. Instead of signing 4 or 3 U22 players to this roster, instead of doing all of that Chris Albright, in a championship window, according to his own self, that we are in the midst of a championship window, that instead of adding any quality player, he would be trying to sell the best player in the league. That would be a fireable offense, I would think, if I were Jeff Berding. And that's what Albright told me, that, hey, we're trying to win a championship, so we're not going to sign anybody good, and we're going to sell Lucho. I would fire him. That's a guy that is not trying to win anymore.
If they had that window and shipped Lucho on top of it,
right?
I would be in TQL Stadium. I'd be walking out of it holding some podium.
Some mail from somebody's office. Tell you that much.
We're burning that place to the ground.
We're climbing the gates and we're storming TQL Stadium. We're going to stop the. Lucho Acosta can still be on the FC Cincinnati roster if Dan McNally has the courage. Okay.
I
heard this and I felt embarrassed asking people that I talked to about this. And, I have sources too. The answer is no, that was absurd. This didn't happen. So we'll have a source off, and it is what it is. The important thing to know about sources is that lots of people talk, and there are people around this fan base that have sources with news that's that seismic. Most people, if that were the case, wouldn't tell you if that was true, because that's the kind of stuff that gets them fired when it gets found out. So you always take that kind of rumor mill stuff with a grain of salt. The important thing to know about this too is that, is it true? No, it's not true. I would stake a lot of cash on the fact that it's not true. But there's varying degrees of truthfulness. It's like when our former president said, it depends on what your definition of is. Is Chris Albright shopping Lucho? No. Did Chris Albright potentially listen to... Now, this is me speculating. This is not what I've been told. This is me speculating. I want to make that very clear. This is not anything other than the chief throwing this out there. Has Chris Albright listened to offers about Lucho? Yeah, I'm probably sure he has. I'm probably sure that there are people that have called Chris Albright asking for Lucho Acosta. I'm sure he's offered Lucho Acosta to people too on a, what would you give me for him? Does that mean he's seriously shopping him? No. The Bengals field offers about Joe Burrow too, I'm sure. On draft day, when the Bengals were drafting number 1, I'm sure people called and asked about the pick. And I'm sure the Bengals called and asked, what will you give me for him? If like the Kansas City Chiefs were interested in trading Patrick Mahomes for that number 1 pick, yeah, the Bengals would have taken that. And Joe Burrow would be playing in Kansas City right now. Like, these types of conversations happen at a high level and a theoretical level in sports about all the time about all your favorite players.
Yeah.
And all it takes is one person saying, oh, I heard that they were offering Lucho Acosta. Well, devoid of context, that tells me nothing. What I do know is that if any such conversation happened, they were not serious, and they never reached the point of anyone taking them seriously, if they happened at all.
Yeah, I mean, you can concoct situations in which Lucho was dealt last window or Lucho was dealt in the winter. They require so much other specific information surrounding them that, to me, it's not even worth like worrying about.
No,
because if like, if Mbappe comes down and says like, I'm going to force a deal to FC Cincinnati, but they're insisting that you send Lucho Acosta back. Yeah, Acosta probably goes. Right?
Right.
Albright listens to that offer. But the idea that they were like with devoid of context, it sounds like they were shopping him the way they were shopping Bupenza.
Right.
Because
they were desperately trying to
shopping
find someone.
Bupenza because they were desperately trying to get anything for him,
Right,
to free up his roster spot. That's not whatever conversations Albright might or might not have had with other teams about Acosta. It wasn't that,
Yeah,
you know,
it was not.
And I don't, it's the kind of thing that you have to treat as bullshit, because how you take it depends on like at least 15 other factors that compose the context around any hypothetical move.
right.
And without knowing those things, there's no way to feel about it, you know?
Right.
So it's nothing.
Yeah.
Because it's just because it is.
Yeah.
It's nothing. And because like there was other things thrown around. There was the alleged, I saw this on Twitter, the alleged trade they were going to do of Robinson down to Miami.
Yeah.
There was the Twitter rumors about bringing Drake Callender up. None of that happened. They were the kinds of things that felt preposterous on their face.
Miles Robinson
Unless
for
I
Drake
added-
Callender. Yeah.
Unless I added a bunch of other contingencies.
Right.
Where it's like, okay, well, if Roman gets sold for $8 million to a championship team,
Right.
you then might have some gam to trade down for Drake Callender, and he's to be a decent replacement for Roman. You know, like you have to concoct a whole bunch of other things that would need to happen for this to make sense. So you hear a piece of information out of context on its own, it makes absolutely no sense to you. You just got to trust your intuition.
Right. There's also like, before you take something, I would say of that magnitude, the team selling its best player, captain, face of the franchise, before you invest a emotional reaction, see if literally anybody with any shred of credibility is mentioning this. Where clubs in Europe,
I don't want to go.
Well, I'll
Yeah,
just where clubs
I don't
in
want to
Europe.
go down that road, but here's what I would say. I would say there's about 5 people whose word I would take on FC Cincinnati is shopping Lucho Acosta.
Right.
And those people are basically like Albright, Noonan, Acosta himself, not some intermediary or advisor or business associate or whatever, and like Birding and
Tom Bogert.
Tom Bogert.
Yeah. If Tom Bogert said it.
Who was talking to Chris Albright and getting it from one of this.
Right.
It's the call is coming from inside the building.
It's in
Right.
the circle. So yeah.
Yeah, just real quick. It was just like, you see it all the time. You see, especially content aggregators. So these guys that are talking to agents, they will tweet things like so-and-so is being offered to this club or that club. This player is being offered. Or you'll get like a weird, like Galatasaray is interested in Lucho Acosta. Like that's how those little things.
We did this with Lucho before he signed his contract. There was rumors out there that he was trying to go to
Red Star Belgrade.
Yeah.
And make more than they currently spend on their entire roster.
Right. Would have been their record transfer in the history of one of the more prestigious clubs in Europe.
What if this is all a misunderstanding? And so, like, one of my favorite pieces of I'm a James Bond enthusiast. I do weep for the children of America who will never experience the joy of being stuck at their grandmother's house over Thanksgiving and nothing to do except on the cable TBS's 11 Days of 007, where there's just nothing but James Bond movies on, and you're just watching those while all the adults get drunk in the other room. Notoriously bad James Bond movie, Tomorrow Never Dies, one of the bad Pierce Brosnan movies. The actual name of this movie was supposed to be Tomorrow Never Lies, which if you see the movie, the villain owns it's like a Rupert Murdoch stand-in, and he owns a newspaper called Tomorrow. And he is creating world disasters and starting a war so that his newspaper can cover it. So the title Tomorrow Never Lies is supposed to be a play on the idea of him with, hey, we're this truthful news organization. Well, when it was told to the marketing people over the phone, it was written down as Tomorrow Never Dies, and they created an entire marketing campaign over mishearing that word. And by the time someone caught it, it was just like, look, we're just going to go with this. So I'm going to choose to believe that what really happened here is that somebody scribbled Buka in such a way that it looked like Lucho. And we were actually shopping Buka because that would track with the whole Weston McKennie move in the midfield. And so all of this was shopping Lucho. As it turns out, somebody just, like they used the Google Translate button wrong, or they hit something and all of a sudden the name got like transposed somewhere.
I love that. Hey, I just heard FC Cincinnati's trying to sign like a
Bucho,
Lucho. Oh, that might have been it. Yeah, maybe it was Lucho. Oh my God, they're trying to sell Lucho. Yeah, you could see that playing out perfectly.
So one of the tools for like detecting like a joke or like sarcasm online where you can't get tone, right, is to say like, oh, I'm having a really strong reaction to how absurd this statement is.
Right.
Before I angry reply, let's figure out if this person might also see how stupid or ridiculous this statement is. Right. And then if it seems like they do know that the thing they said was really stupid or ridiculous, why did they say it? Did they say it because they intentionally said something ridiculous to invoke some kind of humorous response? Maybe, right? At least go through that process.
Yeah.
And so relatedly, I would suggest when people hear something about something Chris Albright's trying to do, and it seems to make absolutely no sense and be completely ridiculous and really, really dumb. Think to yourself, like, would Chris Albright also think this makes no sense? Right? Or like, maybe I am better at being a GM than Chris Albright is, but am I that much better?
This reminds me of the Dwight Schrute logic. I asked myself, would an idiot do this? And if the answer is yes, I don't do it.
Speaking of Tomorrow Never Dies, real quick, I once had standing room only tickets to the play The Hangman in London, and at intermission, when the lights come up, I realized that the entire first act, I was standing next to where Jonathan Pryce was sitting in the audience.
Oh,
so I had a brief
next
encounter
to a Bond villain. That's exciting.
with Jonathan Pryce. Yeah.
Wow. Look at you,
man! About the worldly gentleman who once frosted his tips and wore puka shells.
A man contained multitudes.
An illuminating part one. Let's head on over to part two. We've got a couple of Patreon questions to address before we get to our Montreal preview over in part three. Before we head on over to that next part of the episode, I do want to tell you about our friends over at Cincy Shirts, our dear, dear friends here at the Postcast. Believe it or not, our very first sponsor from way, way back when. And guess what? Not only are they good friends of ours, not only have they been doing FC Cincinnati gear from USL year one, but these guys are also doing Postcast merch. That is right. We have designs up on the website right now. Search Cincy Postcast. You can find our gear on Cincy Shirts. There's also links in the description of this show. But if you don't like our stuff, and you know what? If you don't tell me about it, but that's fine. Okay. You can buy anything else off of the Cincy Shirts website or in store using promo code ThePostCincy. All one word, all caps. That will knock 10% off of your entire order. That works on Cincy Postcast shirts themselves. And you can check them out in person. They are in Oakley Hyde Park. They are in Fort Mitchell, and they are also in Loveland. You can print any shirt on demand. I know that from experience. I've been able to do it. Walk in there, ask them to make a design, any size shirt, any design. It's really, really cool setup to do it in person there in any of their 3 locations. So again, a huge thank you to Cincy Shirts for sponsoring this episode. And thank you, dear listener, for using that promo code. Again, ThePostCincy, all one word, all caps, 10% off your next order. All right, back to the episode. All right, we are back. And as I mentioned, we've got some questions from the Patreon. If you give us a mere $2 a month, you too can ask a question that ends up on this podcast, probably in time in the month that you asked.
Probably, definitely.
No, it ends up on the podcast.
Yeah, I get the August questions? We're a small batch podcast right here, okay? Like, you send the question, we're going to find time to answer it here, okay?
Yes. So you can ask questions. You also get another perk. Your name is highlighter pink in the Discord. And if you don't have that, let me know and I can add that to you manually. The Discord is free, though. I know a lot of places put the Discord or the group chat behind a paywall. Not us. Come hang out. It's a good time. It's an okay time.
It's
okay.
a time.
No, it's a good time. I love our little community we've built up. Okay, so speaking of being worldly travelers and containing multitudes, Jay Walbrink asks a great question. And I understand you guys won't have something prepared, but I do. So Jay asks, if each of you were to plan a trip for your co-hosts that they had to go on, where in the world would you send them? And what plans would you make for them while they are there? I was lucky enough to read this question ahead of time, to think about this, and I have trips for both of you. And I'm curious if you will accept my trips that I will give you. To be clear,
is this like a Price is Right trip where I have to pay the taxes on it or else I don't get to go?
Yeah, you also have to pay for all of the tickets, all of the hotel. But it's yours if you want it. I did the planning.
You know what we should do now is you should list these trips, and then we should add a special $10,000 Patreon tier available to one person. And the only thing you get is a guarantee that we're giving all these trips out to ourselves, and we will take pictures. Maybe.
I mean, what you would do is it would be a $10,000 tier, and you get to go on one of these trips with us. So we drag along our sugar daddy or sugar mama to wherever we're going. Well, one of these is far cheaper than the other. I'll tell you that much.
Turns into an extended episode of I'm with Busey.
Okay, so first up, I've got a trip for Chief. There's a couple of ideas that went into this. First, Chief really likes to pronounce German words. This is something that I know about Chief. And Chief also despises soccer hipsters. So I am going to send Chief to Hamburg, Germany, to go attend a St. Pauli match in the city of Hamburg. You can live amongst, for a week or whatever it is, you get to live a week amongst the hardest of hardos.
Oh, God.
The hippest of hipsters. And you get to be in the port city of Hamburg, Germany. Chief, how exciting does this trip sound to you?
The only way this can I add my little own spin to this?
Sure.
I need to be provided with a Rob Lowe style hat that just has the MLS logo on it.
Yes.
And I want to attend the game in the MLS hat. and I want all of my pictures tagged Detroit City FC and with the pro rel never for US hashtag.
Your life might be in danger with just an MLS hat.
You don't understand. I support closed leagues everywhere. It's just,
right. Maybe specifically sending you to a RB Leipzig versus St. Pauli matchup, since they just got promoted back to the Bundesliga. So you could really see the hardcore grassroots soccer versus corporate soccer.
Are they any relation to St. Pauli girl beer?
I'm gonna say no, but I don't know.
I'm still in.
Okay, you have to only drink non-alcoholic St. Pauli beer the whole time. There, now you've tied it in. Congrats.
Shit.
For Grayson, like I said, one of these trips is a lot more expensive than the other one. Grayson, I am sending to the great city of Indianapolis, Indiana, specifically July 31st to August 3rd, 2025. Why would I do that to Grayson? Grayson, I'm giving you a VIP pass to Gen Con, baby. This is the largest D&D convention that exists outside of the traditional comic cons, which are not usually specifically D&D. But more importantly, I would make sure you have tickets to, and therefore would have to participate in the live action role-playing aspect that does happen in the basement of the Marriott in downtown Indianapolis. We're LARPing, baby. You're going LARPing.
Hold on.
Please.
I can make this perfect.
Please.
It is Grayson's trip is either this trip to Gen Con, where he will be forced to live action role play and play Dungeons and Dragons, or a trip to the Swiss Alps with a lift pass and all you can ski at whatever ski resort is the best ski resort in the Alps.
Probably be Zermatt, but
there. And that in order to get the trip to the Swiss Alps, you have to roll a perception check that gets over a 15. And if you roll under a 15 on a D20, you're going to Gen Con.
I'll tell you, if you send me to Gen Con, I will come out running that place.
I love it.
Let's see, trips I would send, just as I didn't have any time to prepare for this.
Right.
Grayson loves live theater. Grayson loves live shows.
Yes.
Grayson loves people watching. Grayson loves being among the upper crust of society. So I would send Grayson on an all-expense-paid trip to Branson, Missouri.
I was thinking Williamsburg.
Where there is nothing but live theater, live shows.
It's true.
There are plenty of Buc-ee's that you can stop at along the way to get the full American experience on this. Water skiing, I assume, is a thing there. That's a form of skiing, right?
Yeah. It's the more sophisticated one. I think most people agree.
Kevin, for you, I don't know. Like, I could never unhear the fact that when you did your KLR MLS minute, there was always the Soviet national anthem in the background. So I think what my trip for you would be on the railway between Moscow and Vladivostok, traveling across the Siberia.
The Trans-Siberian
Railroad. The Trans-Siberian Railroad.
Sign me up. It sounds delightful.
And like, maybe we start you off with a match. What's the Moscow? It's the
there's a handful. There's CSK Moscow.
CSK is the one I was thinking of, and I'm sure there's a team in Vladivostok. So like you go and you do the multi-overnight run on the Trans-Siberian Railroad, and then catch a match there. And then the fun part about this trip would be you would be going around the world because you would fly east to Moscow and then continue flying east from Vladivostok across the Pacific back to the United States.
Wow.
So it's a one-way trip around the world, stopping in Soviet Russia, where train rides you.
I like this. I think this would be fun. I'm pretty sure there is a professional team, way out there that gets drawn into like their cup matches that occasionally some poor team has to make the 8,000-mile journey or whatever from one end to the other.
We call it the Sarah Palin Derby because you can see Alaska from your house.
That would be fun. Oh, well, thank you, Jay, for asking the question. That was a fun one.
I have trips.
Oh, please,
So
Grayson, trips.
So Kevin, I'm gonna send you to Stockholm.
Okay, that sounds nice.
I do think that you would have sensibilities to really enjoy Scandinavia. However, the one catch would be, if you have to start every conversation with somebody if whether they remember when Greg Berhalter coached Hammarby.
I might be killed by the end of the trip if I run into a Hammarby supporter.
Chief, you're going to Joshua Tree. You are going to the there's two particular activities that you're gonna engage in. One is there is a lovely little shop that sells natural wine and crystals. So the crystals work. Because the wine is natural.
That's true.
There is a fun, I think it's called, there's a fun bar downtown where they play, there's like often live music and they play like the Dead
Hell
and stuff. It's a real cool vibe. Pioneer Town is fun, has live shows sometimes, although the good ones are, I think, not usually publicized. But the big crowning achievement of the trip for Chief is you're going to get to go take a sound bath at the Integratron.
Wow.
The Integratron is a time machine that a guy built. There's no nails in it. There's no nails in the structure.
I don't think I would assume there are nails in a time machine.
Well, it's pretty big.
Oh, okay.
So it's a time machine that's never been used, but aliens visited this guy in a dream and told him how to build a time machine. So he built it. Okay. It's on an area of land that has a lot of energy.
Cool.
And I can tell you how I know it has a lot of energy is the first time we went, a woman was telling us that she had scientists from Russia come to it and that they had like monitors and equipment. And she looked at the monitors and it was like off the charts. So that's how you know.
That's good.
That's how you know it's got the energy. And then the second time I went, so the first time was actually like there were still COVID restrictions, so we had to do it outside, which was still pleasant, but the second time we got to go inside the Integratron. And
you didn't time travel?
No.
Oh, do you have to like activate it first, or can like you just go in and just see what it would?
No, but I'll tell you this. The guy who played the crystal bowls was I don't know a non-vulgar way to say this. He was like the fuckingest guy you'd ever seen in your entire life. He had to be like in his 70s. And he told us that so at one point early on, right before, he made a comment like he likes to say herstory because men have had a good run, and it's like
this guy fucks.
This guy, yeah. And then the other thing was he said he used to be a massage therapist, and then some witches taught him how to play the bowls.
Oh,
like
nice. This guy's metal.
Yeah, this like I know I was talking about the tow truck driver earlier, but like this is like the freest man
Right.
who's ever lived.
Right.
The Integratron was started in 1957. The structure erected in 1959. It was financed predominantly by no donations, including funds from Howard Hughes.
Wow.
Yeah, no, this is I can't decide which trip I love more. I want to win both showcases, Bob.
If you
Hell
get the
yeah.
price exactly right, you do.
The Integratron. How is there not like a documentary I can watch about some cult that's involved with this?
I'm sure there is.
Yeah, I got to look for that.
But you do have to, if you go to the Integratron, I do ask that you be respectful of the space. Because, you know, we want to keep the energy energy
absolutely.
good and pure. You could
Dude,
also
can
you could also buy crystals there, and they will charge them for you on site.
You know who would really love this?
No extra charge.
Wow.
I'm
know
not
who
even
really
joking. They will do it for free.
You know
You
who
have to
really
pay
love
for the
this trip?
crystal.
My Mrs. Chief would love this. As a science teacher, she loves crystals and alternative medicine.
Yeah,
Big
who
into
doesn't?
that. Can you imagine how awesome my takes would be on this podcast after visiting the Integratron and just charging through the natural energy of the Earth and the universe and the cosmos?
Oh,
Hell
man.
yeah.
Grayson, I feel like you sold yourself short. You definitely time traveled. You went forward in time by the exact normal amount.
That's true. That's true.
It would have been wild if you did not time travel, though. Like you walked in there and like time froze for you.
All right, so we need to figure out how much all this costs. We need to add that as a Patreon tier. Not because I want anyone to do it, but just because it'd be very funny to have a $2 Patreon tier and then like a $75,000 Patreon
We need to do like, you know, like MLS 229 palms.
Let's do Integratron. Integratron FC. It's no worse than Chicken in FC.
It might be better. Yeah, but what'll happen is somebody will accidentally click on it, and some poor bastard's gonna have some $70,000 charge.
Yeah, you
That'd
know
be
who
great.
else is going to have a charge? Your boy here when he goes to the Integratron and gets all energied up.
You can tell when you're in the park about the energy because the Joshua trees, they're shaped like tuning forks, kind of, you know, and they're like shaking.
Wow.
They're shaking, right? That's how
Yeah.
you tell they're like channeling the energy.
Damn.
Not because like the wind or anything.
No, Chief, you might not come back.
Yeah, no, I'm staying there. I'm getting all energized right here.
Got another question from the Post's own Damon Cumbert. David, why are you subscribed? If Cincinnati does eventually get an NWSL franchise and you could pick one soccer star, regardless of money, that you would want the team to sign outside of Rose Lavelle, who would it be? Yeah, I know the outside of Rose Lavelle really throws us off. I'll be honest with this one and say I frankly am not well-versed in women's soccer, and I would be hesitant to
Trinity
hazard a
Rodman
name.
would be badass to have.
Trinity Rodman would be fun.
I would be 1,000% in on that.
She seems to be the new hotness these days.
So for feels, Crystal Dunn.
Yeah.
But for competitive, for competitiveness, Naomi Girma.
Sophia Smith wouldn't be a terrible choice either. Just thinking.
For one more year, like if we were expanding next year, Marta would be fun to have her swan song in Cincinnati.
But then would they have like a Portuguese speaker on staff for her?
They would actually specifically hire only a Spanish speaker for her.
Sure.
They do their best to make her really uncomfortable. That's how most teams operate. Okay, only a couple more to go here. Graki asks, this one's mean-spirited, Graki. How many Kubo misses will it take to make us realize he is a great super sub, but not a long-term striker for the club? The man is great at making runs and getting into position to score, just doesn't seem to have the killer instinct to finish consistently enough. Chief, agree or disagree?
I disagree. I think part of the problem is, if you want an actual answer to this question and not just, dumb shit, The problem is they refuse to play him at striker. Is that every other game he's dropping back to the midfield or playing on the wings. When he got a solid run of games at striker, he played very, very well. They just need to commit to playing him at striker. And he's going to finish a lot of these opportunities off. I mean, he's a 9-goal scorer in league right now. I think for the money they're paying him, he's fine. He's probably the best option on the roster in terms of goal scorer.
Yeah, I mean that's the issue. I don't think that a decision was made to just ride Kubo for the next 5 years.
Right.
Right. I think that the roster is the roster. And, okay, Kubo is not the let's say given. Kubo is not the long-term option at striker.
Right.
And assuming we're playing 2, right? Because despite how they've been lining up, I still think 2 strikers is the way forward.
Yes.
Who on the roster is that, right? So
I guess finishing these chances.
I guess however many misses it takes to get through the winter when they sign Bertarami or whoever.
Right.
I don't know what to tell you.
Especially at this point. Now, granted, Grocki wrote this 2 weeks ago, so things have changed slightly since then.
Speaking of, a prospect for striker of the future, right, is Stefan Schirilla, and I wanted to mention this.
Oh yeah, we
did in the first part of the podcast.
Yeah,
but it appears to be that a second Schirilla has dropped.
Wow.
The folks who track academy transfers have reported that Andre Schirilla has joined the FC Cincinnati Academy from the Philadelphia Union Academy. So keep your eyes out for that.
Which one was the more highly regarded one?
So I think that how we got Stefan is they had him playing like defensive midfield or something.
That's right.
I'm kind of misremembering this, and they realized when they got here that he's a striker, and so I imagine I don't know who's more highly regarded, but I imagine that they were maybe more reluctant to let the younger brother go, having
seen what his brother did. It's
like,
having seen what happened. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, great bit of business, dare I say, from Chris Albright picking that up.
We should do an episode in the off season that's like way more focused on
the 2 team,
the academy and the 2 team, and just like the process that this all works, because it's weird, and it's a way longer conversation than this. It's weird how little, even as FCC expands what it's doing with its academy tremendously, it's still weird how much more they could be doing, and that all MLS teams could be doing to develop a pipeline of local talent. I don't know. It's interesting to me.
I don't really follow academy stuff, so if anybody listening has any ideas for, who might be able to come on and speak knowledgeably about it, or has any link ups, let us know. Because I'm definitely, not while the season's going, I think, but absolutely, it's something worth diving into, and something I am really, really shallow on personally.
Yeah. Cosign. Okay, we got 2 more questions. We'll go with the lighter one first. David Ziegler asks us, at time of recording 3 hours ago, David, getting it in under the wire here. You get 5 championships for your sports teams, pro and college. What championships are you picking, and how are you distributing them? / when are they winning them? This is a really good question. Really makes you value. Like, you could put like FCC wins MLS Cup every 2 years for the next 10 years. That would be fun. But
that would be fun.
But
I'll let you guys go. I will let you guys go first, because Kevin, you should go first because Grayson
Okay.
and I think, are the only two people on this podcast whose teams have won, or teams we would pick have won a title of some sort.
This is such a good point. So I was talking to my good friend Andrew Printovic about this earlier this week. So as Cincinnati fans, if you were a fan of anti-Cincinnati, so your fandom is just you want Cincinnati to be as miserable as possible. In professional sports, you would be a Steelers fan, you'd be a St. Louis Cardinals fan, and you'd be a Columbus Crew fan. And I will say, just for the sake of this conversation, from 2019 onwards, so once FCC joins MLS so that they could be co-equals in Major League Soccer, if you were a fan of Cincinnati, you have seen in my lifetime 7 championships. And if you're a fan of Cincinnati, you have seen maybe 1, depending on how you want to view the Supporters Shield. And if you do view the Supporters Shield as a championship, you've seen 9, I think, other championships. So it's rough out there for a Cincinnati fan. I will say, if I were doing this and sort of assuming I get to live to all of these, every 3 years, I would give myself a random grab bag, whichever these are. But every 3 years, I'd like to see a Reds World Series, a UC Bearcats Men's Basketball National Championship, a UC Bearcats Men's Football Championship, an FC Cincinnati championship. And this is a fun one, an Everton Premier League title win, just because that one feels more improbable than any of the other ones actually coming to fruition. I honestly don't. Bengals and Reds, take them or leave them. I'd like to see them do well, but I'm not living or dying by them. So that's how I would divide up my championships. Did I not include FCC? I would include FCC in there. Take away one of the Bearcats ones. So there you go.
I would give 2 to FC Cincinnati.
Okay.
Of the 5. I'd want 1 for Xavier basketball. I would want 1 more for the Buccaneers.
Mm.
And then just because it would be one of the biggest sports stories of all time, give me Tulane for a NCAA title. An improbable run from the American Athletic Conference.
For whatever the improbable run the Bearcats would be, Tulane is more.
Yeah, no, just fuck it. Like we're going crazy here.
I mean, I guess with the playoff anymore,
it's possible.
Like, there's reasonable paths for all of these days. Okay. That's good. Grayson, how are you dividing up your 5 championships?
Going 1 Super Bowl to the Bengals.
Okay.
They need it. It's something that I think about all the time that it's never going to happen. I just feel like getting that 1 at some point in the next 4 or 5 years would just feel so good. And I think it's probably diminishing returns after that. I mean, just let me feel it one time. I think I got to go 2 MLS Cups to the FC.
Yeah.
Get those 2 stars. I would like Acosta to be on the team for both of them, I think.
Okay, yeah.
I just think it would be nice. So I guess by 26.
Oh, well, they better get moving.
Well, you said I could say when.
Oh, no, I know.
And then I need 1 Buckeye basketball and 1 Buckeye football in the same year.
Ooh, okay.
Because I watched that. I remember watching them lose the college football national championship the college basketball national championship, and the college football national championship in sequence.
Didn't
Just
two
three
of those
in a row
come against Florida as well, back to back?
Yeah, the football, the first football and the basketball came against Florida.
Oh.
And then the second football was against LSU.
Damn.
So I think I'm owed a year
I'd be
where they
tempted
win
to
both of those.
I would be tempted just to go for FC Cincinnati just to make sure they have one more than the Crew do.
Yeah, I
thought about just doing 5 FCC every 2 years, like as my legitimate answer.
Just 5 back to back, 5 in a row, all 5 in a row, and just go down in history as the best American soccer team of all time.
I could be talked into 4. I need one Bengals Super Bowl.
So if you do 5 FCC in a row starting next year, you probably are seeing the end of the Acosta era and one championship in the first post-Acosta era. Or maybe Lucho Acosta goes on the burner of all burners for his age 36 year or whatever in that last year. He's just tearing the league up.
You say all this like how you would divvy this up. This is just living in Boston over the last 20 years.
Yeah. Except for the Revs.
Well,
but I guess they don't live in Boston, and
they don't live in
Boston
Boston either.
Cares about them either. So
they did make like 4 or 5 finals in that stretch. They just never got any of them done. Great question, David. Glad you got that one in. All right, last one here, and the last one for the month, as far as I can tell, unless I missed somebody in here. Porter Henson asks, in your expert opinions, what are some things that the club, and by extension MLS, could do to make reporting on FCC and the league more accessible and transparent? More specifically, are there things those parties could do or change that would help you as a collective of consummate professionals? Wow, this person is...
That's false.
Way.
But I appreciate it.
Get more insight and access to provide even more better coverage and content of the club and league. I also asked Laurel a variation of this question so we can be the change we want to see in the world. Oh, well, thank you, Porter, for supporting both.
She'll have a better answer for you than we will. I guarantee you that.
Yeah. Well, one, she actually covers the league and the team. I don't know what we do. I hesitate to call it covering. I don't think that's the correct word. But it is a good question. What can the league, what can the team do to be more transparent? I mean, in terms of like what the Post does, and there isn't much. In a lot of ways, it's sort of on us to build out a hard news, non-opinion wing of the Post, and then just continue to work.
I mean, I'll say it outright. Like the team is, I wouldn't give us access to players if I was the team.
Right.
Yet they do, which I think is an enormous credit to the great PR staff we have that work at this club, that they're eager to give, I'll say generously, alternative sources a chance to help players tell their story a little bit and let fans get to know some of these guys. I don't know. League as a whole, I think the real easy thing that this league could do is just be more transparent about the roster rules, the money, the salary cap, and let fans have an informed opinion as to how well their teams are doing building rosters by seeing how much, money they have, how it's being spent, and what resources they're using and not using. I think that would be a great start, just to have a GAM tracker that the league manages, where you can go and you can see how much GAM, how much TAM, how much roster room each team has. And you can criticize your team that you finished the transfer window, one max player budget charge under the cap. Yeah. And then you can have a robust debate as to whether or not the roster build was good. I think that is the easiest change this league could make, to try and make it more fun and accessible to follow. I think having more players do media, would be better. It seems like the players have a lot of agency over whether they do media that I don't think exists in other sports leagues, where there are just open locker rooms and the expectation is from the league and the requirement is that you talk to the media. Yeah, I just think this league just needs to be more open. It needs to be more open for journalists. There needs to be a reason for every local outlet to cover the team. And that means access. That means having something to tell. That means being interesting. That means telling your coaches to give better answers than just short, like, we're not going to reveal anything. It means having training be open for more than 15 minutes a day or whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah, all of those things would be great. It would even be great to take a step further in the world of soccer and have teams report. I don't know what is even possible, but I would love to see reported transfer fees. I would love to see the teams report the salaries and track the salaries instead of waiting for the union to do the dump. And it would be nice if the teams and the union could work together to publish a more accurate number. I understand the league would have every incentive to publish the lowest possible number, and the union has every incentive to publish the highest possible number. It'd be good to get the actual number there. Things like that would be lovely. And I think a general sense of the league being willing to not be the first source for all of the stuff that, this is probably a dumb take. I understand that. But I think the existence of Extra Time, I think the existence of the well covered MLSsoccer.com makes it difficult for a competitor to compete with clicks in that environment. And I think they would do well to ease off the gas and to help promote other outlets, other shows, and get comfortable with those outlets being critical. That, like, the NFL has programs on the NFL network that is critical of the NFL. Like, it's okay. You will survive. It is a part of the entertainment of the sports product to have criticisms at the commissioner, at the league, things like that. You'll survive. But yeah, let other outlets pick it up and run with it and have a stake and have some ounce of ownership in this space. So I don't know if that opens up transparency, but I think it would help the league generally. So
yeah, I just think in general, the league needs to realize that if it's going to be a big and popular sports league, people are going to want to know things about it.
Yeah.
And, that's just what comes, so people are going to be interested in salary caps and what's going on with the players and who might be traded and why certain lineups are going some way, or, whether some coach should be fired. I mean, these are all things that exist in all the popular sports. And it seems like MLS just doesn't want them to. Like, they want they want an Extra Time. They want a very friendly league media environment that tells you one nice thing about every team every week.
Yeah, right.
Right.
And
whereas every other sports league, it's like you don't hear about, you're a Bengals fan, you don't hear about the Bengals every week. You hear a lot about the Cowboys every week in the national media, but you don't have to check the box for every team. If I was MLS too, you know what else I would do? I would take money. You're making all this money with Apple. I'd turn around and pay a bunch of it to Fox Sports and force them to have a studio show every day about MLS during the summertime. Or do something to create the perception that someone cares about this league beyond state-run media. Well, I would spend Extra Time off into its own product. I would have it be a wholly owned subsidiary through 4 shell corporations of MLS, but give the perception that there's independent media that covers this league. You don't want it to be all in-house.
So CBS Sports Golazo seems to be trying to do that kind of soccer studio show. They don't just cover MLS. They do talk about MLS, but I have two big gripes with it, and I've not seen a ton of it, but from what I've seen, I have two. One is it's got that kind of Men in Blazers thing where it's World Soccer is the real show, and MLS is kind of this silly, unserious thing that we have around here.
Right.
So like we'll talk about it and we'll talk to MLS players, but we're just mostly going to cover it from this thing of like, oh man, that's so MLS, or like,
Right.
it's like, it's not taken seriously in and of itself. And then two, just, it's not like a real, it's not like a real sports media show in the sense that like some other things are. It's much more of just like a marketing promotional kind of show.
Right. They own the rights to a lot of the leagues, and so they have the reason to promote those. Yeah, Chief, to your point, I would pay ESPN under the table and make sure MLS has a dedicated 5 minutes in ESPN FC every day or whatever it is, right? Like,
I mean, other than us, who are the people who are just like spouting off angry bullshit about MLS? Like you see from, like Stephen A or
right.
or Skip Bayless or all the different people talking about different shows and stuff, right? Like MLS you will know MLS has made it when the dumbest guy you've ever seen is screaming about how like Ricky Puig hasn't beaten anybody.
Right.
Does he have the clutch gene? If they don't have that debate about some player in MLS, yeah.
And that guy better not know what an XG is.
No.
Right.
Like he better not have ever used the word like regista.
Actually,
Yeah.
I love the idea of them using XG to like make an argument, and somebody asks them to explain what XG is. I don't know.
It's like Michael Irvin. He's a XG.
That's like, that was Joe Morgan on Sunday Night Baseball forever. It's like, well, his OPS. OPS, what is that?
Yeah, that's what I want. I want
Right.
Joey Votto just clogs up the base paths.
And Fire Joe Morgan was a fun website, and it was fun to like kind of shit on Joe Morgan.
Yeah.
Right. But
and then it also led to us getting Parks and Rec in the office. So it's like, okay.
You can't shit on Joe Morgan if Joe Morgan's not on TV, like being a crotchety old guy.
Yeah, like the MLS just needs to engage in just a massive astroturfing campaign. Like they need to find, like, we suck at this. Find 3 people that are good at this and start a national MLS show. Start 3 of them and just see what ticks. Call Dave Portnoy up and offer him $1 million to start an MLS Barstool show. Like, you just got to throw a bunch of stuff at the wall and see what sticks. And if a media ecosystem isn't arising naturally, like, look, they showed up late to the party in the 90s. This league has really only been somewhat popular for 15 years,
Right.
if even that.
Yeah.
At some point, someone at MLS needs to take some of the money they're making and go create a AstroTurf, a media ecosystem surrounding this league and fake it till you make it. And it's got to be more than just extra time. Like, you've got to try 10, 15 different angles. Maybe 2 of them work, maybe 3 of them work, maybe 10 of them work. But you've got to create more content for people to consume around this league and generate more content. And this league is too quiet in the days between matches. There's news for the NBA and the NFL every single day of the week. Every day.
Yeah.
You've got to get to that point with MLS.
So here's an example of if MLS had like a healthy media ecosystem. San Diego FC very quietly hired their first head coach this week.
Yes.
They hired Mikey Varas, who was the US U20 coach and was an assistant coach under Greg Berhalter. He's never been a club professional. He's been mostly a youth coach. Nothing about his background screams like qualified to coach an MLS team. Right. So like, but the problem is all of the reaction to it is like too many people, like everybody in that talks about MLS on like a quote unquote national, understood as national being like the MLS scale national. All of the national commenters like know who Mikey Varas is.
Right.
And they know people who know Mikey Varas.
Right.
And they know people who maybe worked for the consulting company that put San Diego FC in touch with Mikey Varas. But in like a real media environment, they would be excoriated
Yes.
for this hire, right? They'd be like, this is not a serious move you make.
Chucky
if you're trying
Lozano
to win day
is
one
supposed
coming into the league.
Right.
You're
Yeah.
telling me Chucky Lozano is going to be taking orders from Mikey Varas?
Right.
Yeah, so can you imagine
The same
if-
guy who just went from coaching like Zach Booth
Right.
or whatever.
No, it would be the equivalent of an NFL expansion team hiring the head coach of Saint X.
Right.
Or
Right.
hiring like the quarterbacks coach of USF.
Right. Right. It's like, well, you can see like how if his career kept going, he could have ended up here. He skipped a lot of steps.
He's got the first part of the resume.
And the last part of the resume, it turns out.
Oh, yeah. Wild. And yeah, you're exactly right. Wow. Smart hire. Good hire. Not just like, yo, you could have just hired Greg Berhalter if this is what you were trying to do. Yeah. Awful. So yeah, there you go. Hey, thank you, Porter, for the question. Fantastic questions from the patrons. I'm going to do one quick scroll through here, and we are good. So let's head on over to part 3. Let's preview this match against Montreal, and let's get the hell out of here. We are back. We've got a match this weekend against CF Montreal. A couple of names are out for this one. One, Lucho Acosta. I don't know if you guys have heard of him. He is suspended for this game. DeAndre Yedlin is suspended for this game. On Montreal's side, though, Raheem Edwards is suspended for this game.
I know who that is for sure.
That's probably one of a handful of team or players on this Montreal team.
If it's a combination of Raheem Sterling and Anthony Edwards, I'm happy to miss him.
Right. I don't think he's quite that good, but he is the Canadian international center back, so you got that, or at least I think he was. So Montreal, not very good. Last time out, they lost 5-0 at home against the New England Revolution. Before that, they lost 2-0 to Philadelphia in the League's Cup. They did beat San Luis 3-2 in the League's Cup. Atletico San Luis. That's the Atletico Madrid affiliate.
Former team of Herman Berterame.
That's right. Before that in the League's Cup, Montreal lost 4-1 to Orlando. So they've had a rough go of it. The last time they got a win, July 13th. They beat Atlanta 1-0.
When was the last time we got a win?
That's exactly what I was trying to look up. Who has had a win more recently in the league? We had July 6th. They have one more recently, but ours was a 6-1 demolition of Inter Miami. So
6-1 beat down.
And we beat Santos Laguna in League's Cup, which is a better team than Atletico San Luis. On paper, even with FC Cincinnati's recent struggles, you would expect FC Cincinnati to, I'm not going to say anything more than win against Montreal. I don't think we have it in us to crush anybody, to put anybody away at the moment, but a win at home against a objectively terrible Montreal team seems doable. Chief, how do you feel going into this one?
Not great.
Oh boy.
So they're down Lucho. That doesn't seem like a big miss considering how ineffective he was against Miami. Being down Yedlin sucks, especially because I think Yamil Assad has started to train off to the side, but the off to the side is usually the precursor
Right.
to joining the group, and joining the group means that you're probably only good for a substitution late in the match, unless you've had that full week of training. So, and imagine like telling yourself a couple of months ago, oh my God, you're worried that Yamil Assad isn't back.
Right.
You say they're objectively terrible. They're 11th in the table, and they are only 1 point out of the playoff picture. Behind
I love
Atlanta
MLS. I love
Right.
MLS so much.
This league rules. Negative 20 goal differential, though. So they are.
Which is worse than every team below them on the table.
That is, in fact, accurate. I think they have the worst goal differential in the entire Eastern Conference, without looking. New England, negative 19. So, yeah, they are, in fact, the worst.
And,
I don't know.
Yeah.
I just. Who's scoring for this FC team? Like, they don't score goals when Lucho Costa's off the field. It's just. I don't know. I think the best you can hope for in this game is a draw. And if the FC gives up more than one goal, I don't think they've got the firepower to score more than that with the lineup they've got right now. They're in a terrible run of form. I don't know. After you watch that Miami game, I don't know how you can predict the FC to win this game.
Oof. I don't like that. The last time Montreal scored multiple goals in a game, they beat Philadelphia 4-2, June 29th.
I think it's also worth pointing out Montreal has already beaten this FC Cincinnati team this year.
It did happen. And also I missed another game where they drew 2-2. How did that first match go against Montreal? They beat us 2-1 in Montreal. Who was out for this game?
Basically nobody.
Lineup was as good of a lineup as we possibly could have put out. In fact, it might have been the only time this year you could say that we had the best team available. That was Murphy, Miazga, Robinson, Alec Can in goal, for what it's worth. Luca Orishano, Buka, Wobodo, and Yedlin, Acosta, Kubo, Bupenza. Nick Hagelin, Corey Baird, and Dado eventually subbed into this game. And it was Joseph Martinez who subbed in the 26th minute and got a goal and an assist. Cool. Yeah. Raheem Edwards got an assist in that game, so good. We're missing him, so that's great. Also, he's a left back, so I'm really good at this.
Dear me.
Grayson, do you think a draw is the best we can hope for?
I mean, you can always hope for a win.
Thanks.
What I would just say about this game is, I know this game is meaningless. It says nothing about the team the rest of the year. Yedlin is out. Acosta is out. Hadebe is not going to be with the team yet.
Yeah.
The result, it's not going to have any bigger impact except, seeding, but like, as far as like narrative about who is the team, it's not going to say anything about what the team is.
I'd agree with that.
Heading into ultimately the playoffs. And as bad as the team has been, they're going to make the playoffs in some way, shape, or form. I would wager that if they got no points the rest of the year, they would still make the playoffs. So, and I think it's going to be a few weeks before the team really picks it up. I know we have an international break coming. I would love to say we're going to come back for the international break and be the team that we all expect and hope it to be. I don't think that's going to be the case. But I just think the way out is through. And I am not going to press the panic button if they lose the next 3-4 games, to be honest. So I think I just want everyone to do their best and have fun. You know?
I'm going to hold you to that. No panicking.
Spend time with your families. It's Labor Day weekend.
That is true.
So there's going to be fireworks Sunday night. You can go on the bike trail. You can go kayaking on the Little Miami. There's like so many ways to spend your dime and enjoy your life.
Wow.
And, watch the game, for what it's worth. But we're not going to be doing reactions. I mean, we will be doing reactions.
I think we're still going to keep the podcast going through the rest of the season.
We will be doing reactions. We will be doing takes. But I want to say that whatever the takes are, I hope that they're received by listeners as just kind of honest emotional reactions, and just not isn't like the emotion might not be rational and it might not be cogent, but it's honest.
Yeah.
And doesn't that have value? So we're gonna lose 2-0.
I was wondering where this is going.
And just don't worry about it.
Two things. One, just something I find funny. Fought Mob has our roster broken down. We have 14 defenders on the roster and 3 forwards.
Cool.
It doesn't have Joe Aquini, but I think that's really funny. The other thing is, Grayson, I will push back a little bit on this. I will say if there is one storyline to keep an eye on through the remainder of the season, it would be, do we emerge from the regular season with a striker situation that we are comfortable with going into the playoffs? I think this is the opportunity for players to stake their claim for being the nailed-on starters in do-or-die games. And I think between Joe Aquini and Santos and Kubo that we will have the opportunity to see what that is. So that'd be the one thing that I think you can actually take away. So Chief, you said the most they could hope for was a draw.
1-1.
What are you predicting? 1-1. You're getting everything you ever wanted.
Yeah. I don't see why this team has the firepower to score more than 1 at this point.
How dare. This team is winning 3-1, baby. I'm all in. I think this team will beat a bad Montreal team. I think the players will see that ownership isn't done adding to this roster. This is win now. Teenage. He's a statement of intent. If they were kicking the can this season, they wouldn't have signed him, or they would have signed somebody less. We're in win now mode, and everybody's job is up for grabs. If they don't put it together, there could be a former DP lurking out in Turkey to come steal their job as well. So I like it. And there we go. That's how it'll end. A draw or a win or a loss. So hopefully one of those 3 things happen so we can talk about it. Chief, would you mercifully kill this podcast?
Sorry. This marks the end of your hot teenage talk. Go fuck yourself, San Diego.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Cincy Postcast. It is a production of The Post Cincy. You can check us out at thepostcincy.com or just click a link in the description to check out some of our written work. It also has links to our social media accounts across all sorts of different platforms, including YouTube, where we are trying to do more and more video content. Please, dare I say it, like and subscribe and leave a comment. But no, that would be really, really helpful. Also want to give a thank you to Jim Trace and the Makers. They're a local Cincinnati band who provided all of the music for this episode. We love having them on board. You can check them out. Again, link in the description of this episode to find out where they might be playing shows next or where you can listen to more of their music. Also want to give a massive, massive thank you to the awesome and very attractive patrons over on Patreon. It is a voluntary subscription that people take out with no real promise of anything extra that keep this show afloat. And we are so, so thankful to those of you that have decided to take that commitment. If you do like the show, or at least just want to engage with other people who have listened to the show and want to talk about FC Cincinnati, MLS, soccer, or really anything else, you can go on over to Discord. Again, link in the description. Lots of links in the description where you can find a link to the Discord. That's where we are keeping the conversation going 24/7. It feels like it's a really fun group of people in there just talking about FC Cincinnati. And like I said, just about everything else. And finally, I'll say it. If you liked this episode, and given the fact that you've made it all the way to the end, I have to assume you either like it or for some reason cannot reach the stop button. Please share this episode with a friend or family member or someone who likes FC Cincinnati. The best way for us to grow is from a personal recommendation from somebody who likes it. And if that's you, please tell other people. And if you don't have any friends, feel free to give us a review on whatever your podcast platform of choice is. We'll take anything we can get. But again, a huge, huge thank you to everybody for listening to this show. I am blown away that anybody listens to this. So again, I well and truly mean this. Thank you so much for listening.